If you aren't very skeptical and you just accept whatever your favorite political news station tells you, then you'll probably be led to believe one of two extremes when it comes to how the news portrays race today in America. Either they would have you think that racism is the biggest issue of our world today, which has made every system in America unsalvageable, or, on the other end, that it doesn't really exist at all anymore, and racists don't really exist in 2020, it's just made up by the media. Now, I don't for a second believe that racism is the biggest issue of our time, but at the same time, I've personally experienced direct racism firsthand, so I'm not someone who denies that racism exists at all. I know that it does. But my view is that as long as there's diversity in skin color, there will always be racism because the issue goes far deeper than we think, unless we fix one little thing. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if this is your first time here, go ahead and hit that sub button. And meme team, you guys ready? Then let's go! Here's a fun fact about humans. Humans are painfully insecure. We're constantly trying to find ways to feel better about ourselves and to make ourselves feel more valuable, whether it's going out to the gym and eating healthy, or working to be successful, or helping other people, or having the right set of beliefs, being a good parent, a peacemaker, a really moral person, or really just about anything. Anything that we believe makes us valuable and justifies our personal existence. We can call these things value makers. The thing is, all of us have a favorite value maker. It's the thing that we tell ourselves that if we don't have that thing, then life just isn't worth living. It's that thing that we say to ourselves, if I just had that, then I would actually be happy and then my life would be complete. Now, value makers usually aren't bad things in and of themselves because most of the time they're actually good things. But even good things become bad things when we tell ourselves that they're our ticket to happiness and the reason why we deserve a spot on this planet. At some level, we believe that those things give us a reason to exist. But here's where they go from bad to dangerous. The dangerous part comes in when we realize that humans are fundamentally insecure, as we just talked about a moment ago. So when we realize that we can't live up to a set of expectations that our value makers demand of us, then we try to find other ways to up our value even more, even if we can't get more of the thing that gives us our value at that time. One way we get around the problem is by looking down on other people who don't have what we believe gives us that personal value. So if we see people who don't have what we think we have, then we can start to feel better about ourselves at the expense of how we look at and treat other people. What I found in life is that the longer that we chase our value makers, or the sooner that we end up actually getting those things that we're chasing, the faster that we realize that we've been sold on a lie. None of those things will ever satisfy us, and that's because we simply aren't designed to get our value from those things. We see this with everything from eating healthy all the way to religion. We tell ourselves things like, I'm valuable because I'm part of the good guy team, and those people over there, they're not. Or I'm valuable because I have this truth and they don't. Or I'm valuable because I'm living a moral life and those people over there, they're not. But when we think like this, we can't help but have an unhealthy perception of other people. When we look down on other people in order to elevate ourselves, it becomes like a drug and we need more and more of it in order to keep our self-esteem intact. And we also need more of it to convince ourselves that we're worthy of the life that we have. Now, if you can understand this, then you can start to understand why we have racist people today. Race is also something that people can turn into a value maker. Now, I've talked about this in other videos, but there's been times in my life where people have directly looked down on me and considered me to be less than simply because of the color of my skin. But what I realized during those times was that if someone believes that they're valuable simply because they're a certain race or a certain ethnicity, then they naturally will have to start to look down on those people, the people of another race. They'll start to look down on them because they need to find a way to convince themselves that they have personal value. Even if it's not conscious, at some level they're telling themselves, I'm valuable because of my race, and I would have less value if I was part of that other race. And that's how racism engulfs people's minds, making them racist. So I believe that the problem of racism is ultimately a feeling of deep insecurity, which is a consequence of a misplaced value system. Now, if I'm right here, then the solution becomes obvious. Obviously, they need another value system. But that's the problem, isn't it? If you go to other countries where virtually everyone is the same race, you don't necessarily see a ton of racism, but what you do see are other things that they're going to divide over. Instead, the emphasis might be more on beliefs or tribes or politics or any other number of things. Now, what's funny is that I'm from Colorado, and Colorado seems to be more secular than where my wife is from. She's from Tennessee, where most people claim to be Christians. Now, what I notice is that in Colorado, Christians are working more on trying to just stick together. And so dominations aren't a very big deal to most people here. But in Tennessee, where most people identify as Christians, dominations are far more important to the people, and dominations are far more divisive. So what's going on here? Well, I think all this traces back to our insecurities and our need to turn things into value makers. According to Christianity, our need to do this is because we all have a broken identity, which is a consequence of our fallen nature. And in the secular world, we see the same kinds of issues. The problem is, if your value comes from anything finite on this earth, then you run the risk of losing it, and that makes you more insecure, which ultimately compounds the problem, making it worse. For example, if you believe that you're valuable because you have a good job, then you're always going to be in fear of it not going well or losing it. And if you think that your value comes from being smart, you're always going to live in fear that you're really not as smart as you want people to think that you are. There's always going to be people that are smarter. If you believe that you're valuable because of your good looks, then you're always going to be insecure when you see someone who's better looking than you are, and as you get older and become less attractive. The thing is, there will always be people who are doing these things better than you are, or have more of these things than you do, and you will always be at risk of losing those things. Relationships also make bad value makers. If you believe that you're valuable because you're accepted by someone, then what happens when they stop accepting you or if they die? You won't be able to handle it, and both will always be a possibility. But what would happen if you got your value from someone who accepted you unconditionally and also would never die? Then your value can be far more stable. This is why our value needs to be grounded in something transcendent like God. But only Christianity provides a value maker that's stable and properly understood. It won't cause you to look down on other people who don't have it. It actually removes those core insecurities in a way that's stable and sufficient. In order to have stability, you need unconditional value and acceptance that isn't based on your own performance. It's not good enough to just be created by a God. There can be a God who can create you, who doesn't care about you, or even knows that you exist. It could be some sort of deist conception of God. Therefore, it doesn't follow that you're valuable simply because you were created. But in Christianity, I realized that I was made in God's image. And once I really understand that I was made in his image, I realized that I was endowed and given the utmost value because I was made in the image of the eternal God of the universe. But at the same time, I realized that I'm no more valuable than any other person on this earth, since they too were made in his image, no matter what culture or skin color that they have. Second, in Christianity, the reason I'm saved isn't because I'm more moral or smarter or more spiritual or living a better life than all of the other people outside. None of those things count towards my salvation at all. Christianity teaches that the only reason that I'm saved and eternally accepted is because I just accepted the free gift of salvation that God offers to me and everyone else. So it's not something that I've earned or something that I deserve. And if I didn't earn it or it's something that I don't even deserve, then how could I possibly feel superior to anyone else since it wasn't my hard work or my special skills that allowed me to get it? As long as I'm remembering this, how could I possibly look down on other people who I don't believe are as moral as I am when Christianity teaches that I'm no more deserving of eternal life than the worst of sinners, and none of us are able to save ourselves? In Christianity, my value maker doesn't come from what I do or how successful I am or how good looking I am, nor does it come from the color of my skin. None of those things add or take away my value or contribute to my salvation in the slightest. So in Christ, we have absolutely no justification for looking down on someone else based on the color of their skin, because our skin doesn't add to our God-given value, nor does it take away from our God-given value. The only thing that gives us value is the fact that God created us in his image, and he loved us enough to put on human flesh to come into our world and die for us in our place. When we realize this, we realize that it's who he is and everything that he did that gives us value. It has nothing to do with who we are or anything that we did that gives us value. And that's good news. The reason why it's good news is because we can't even live up to our own standards. We also know that we have fleeting emotions and temperaments and all of these other things that don't allow us to be stable. This is why we know that our skin color doesn't give us any justification for looking down on other cultures or skin colors. I believe that if we all recognize this, then race would never be an issue. All right, so to sum up, I believe that in one way or another, we're all seeking value in order to make our lives meaningful and to give them purpose, and therefore those things will ultimately make us insecure or they'll make us arrogant if we are even achieving those things. But Christianity doesn't make us humble by trying to take away everyone's value and telling us that we're all equally valueless. That can make you humble, but it can't make you secure. Instead, Christianity actually gives you a more stable and secure value maker, which makes you equal to everyone else, while also reminding you that you're so valuable and you're loved so much that the maker of the entire universe was willing to die for you. And because it wasn't only you that he died for, you can't feel better than other people simply because of it. So it can't make you arrogant. Anyone who wants to accept his free gift of salvation can just accept it. So that doesn't make you any better than anyone else on this planet. The religious Pharisees described in the Bible had a misplaced value maker as well, and that's what led them to wrongly look down on other people and also think far too highly of themselves. And today we don't just have religious Pharisees, but we also have secular Pharisees who can be just as, if not even more dogmatic than the religious ones. Go ahead and click on this video to see what I mean. But the next time you find that your value maker causes you to look down on other people out of insecurity, what are you going to say?
What do you mean?